Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's class on drawing a three-quarter view portrait. I am your instructor, Adrienne Hodge, and I'm joining you from my home studio desk in Austin, Texas. It's always so nice to see so many familiar faces and some new folks joining us as well. We do these classes every week on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then, like our moderator said, the classes will be posted on YouTube the next day. So if I go a little fast, you can always watch the playback and pause it or slow it down where you need to. So tonight's class is a bit of a kind of helpful portrait class for figuring out and diagramming the head. And I always just like to manage expectations with any portrait class, especially, or with any class that your results from tonight's class may differ in that, we're all in our on a different path in our journey to portrait drawing, and you may have already more skills that you're starting with than other people in the class. So try not to compare yourself to my example or to other people's examples when we look at those at the end of the class. And I definitely added a little bit extra to my sketches for tonight to oh, I'm seeing in the chat that someone's saying my voice is skipping. Is that happening for other folks? It might be someone's internet connection.
It's not for me. I'll go ahead and give instructions in the chat for.
Several people are saying no, so I think we're okay. So yeah, I added a little bit extra to these just so that they would, look like portraits in the class advertisement. But what we're really going to be doing tonight is just diagramming the head and figuring out the basic structure of the head at a three-quarter view. And if we have time, we will add some details to the model's face using these reference photos. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my tabletop view and go over supplies. Pretty straightforward supply list tonight. We're just using a set of pencils. I'm using the Faber-Castell 6-piece set here. And then I've got a synthetic eraser, and I've got the Canson sketchbook, and any sketching paper and drawing pencils that you have are totally fine. And then we are using this reference photo, or these two reference photos of our model Demetrius, which we have drawn Demetrius once or twice before, I think twice now. We did the basic body proportions back in July, I believe, and then we did a class on sketching a crouching figure, and then we painted it in watercolor, and that was a premium class. But those classes are recorded and are on YouTube. The free ones on sketching and adding value to a crouching figure, that was from the same modeling session with Demetrius, and we will have some other portrait classes featuring this model coming up in the months ahead. Here's a couple of my business cards. You can find me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art and Facebook, Adrienne Hodge Fine Art. And I'll be doing just a brief 10-minute Q&A at the end of class this evening for any lingering questions that you might have. So if you've got a question at the end of the class, you can join me on Instagram at Adrienne Hodge Art, and Chanel just dropped that in the chat again. And don't forget to tag your work with those hashtags, Make It With Michael's or Michael's Classes. And you can also tag me directly whenever you post any sketches or drawings from any of these classes, either tonight or other recordings that you might go back and do some artwork from. Okay, so like I said, you can see here, if you look closely, how I have diagrammed the head here. So I've got like the vertical and horizontal axis on the head, and I've got like some other measurements and things that line up, and using some different shapes. We're going to be walking through all of that tonight, and then adding any you know, details like hair and facial features. We're going to do a little bit of that, but we're not going to, our focus is not going to be on, you know, really developing this portrait since we only have an hour. Mostly we're going to be figuring out just the basics of drawing a 3/4 view portrait, because in the previous classes, we have focused on, we've mostly focused on models and photographs, reference pictures, where the model is facing forward, facing the camera. And so we didn't really have to worry about these tilts and curves that the head is on. And I have touched on this, you know, for sure. And I've definitely touched on it in some premium classes, but wanted to make sure we got a nice class to refer back to that talks about what happens when these facial features are put on a tilt in a 3/4 view specifically. Okay, so I'm going to go to a blank page in my sketchbook here, and we will get started. Okay, so I'm going to tear out this other sketch just to have it handy here. And let me find a better blank page. This one's got something on the other side. Time to hit Michael's for a new sketchbook. This one is getting very filled up. My goodness. All right, we're gonna go with this one. See something else right behind that. All right, I'm not seeing it on the screen, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so biggest question I always get asked is, what pencil am I using? I'm going to be using a darker pencil than I want you to use, so that my pencil lines show up on the zoom. You might use your lightest pencil in this set, which would be your HB or your B pencil. I'm going to get started with my initial sketching lines using a 2B, and then I'll probably move to a darker pencil, but I just want to make sure my lines are nice and dark for you. And I am still seeing my sketch that's showing through right there, so I'm going to put something underneath it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a egg shape. The human head is the shape of an egg or an avocado. And then since we've got this head on a bit of a tilt, we always want to recognize where the crown of the head is in relationship to the chin. And I like to use the idea of a clock. So thinking about a clock at 11 o'clock is where I would put the crown of the head, and I would put the chin at about 5 o'clock. So if this is 11 o'clock, this is 12 o'clock, right? This is about 5 o'clock where the chin is. So we're going to draw an egg that is tilted in a way where the widest part of the egg is tilted at maybe 11 o'clock, and then the narrow part of the egg is tilted over here so that it's at 5 o'clock. And if you can't see my lines yet, give me 1 second. I always start out sketching nice and light. And then once I find the shape, I'm going to make those lines darker. Might even switch to a darker pencil. All right, so we're measuring these facial proportions using this egg shape and thinking about, you know, the crown of the head being at 11 o'clock and the chin being at 5 o'clock. If you are brand new to this concept, then you definitely want to check out a previous class that we had on just basic adult facial proportions. And Chanel can drop the link to that class in the chat. It's going to go over all of the same things in tonight's class, but for heads that are facing straight forward. And I do that for a couple of different photographs of two different folks facing straight forward, and then I also had a class on child facial proportions around the same time, and that one there is a head tilt on a picture of my son in that class, but that's as far as we mostly were focusing on just the differences between adult and child facial proportions in that class, but we definitely did touch on you know, head tilts a little bit in that one, but in this one I'm really focused on that. Okay, so when the head is facing straight forward, as those of you who joined me for that class or just are familiar know, we're looking at a straight vertical line in that scenario and a straight horizontal line to split the center of the face. And we're using that vertical line goes from the crown of the head through the center of the eyebrows, hits the tip of the nose, goes through the center of the lips, and then through the center of the chin, and then lands at the bottom of the chin. So if we're talking about a straightforward view of a head, that vertical line is pretty straight and vertical, right? But since now we've got a head tilted at this angle, we're not looking at a surface that's flat. So now from the crown of the head down to the chin, we've got this curved line. So we're looking at this shape on the head, and we're looking for where that curved line is in relationship to the crown of the head and the chin. So we're just gonna lightly sketch it in, coming down like this on our egg here. And that might not land exactly where you want it to the first time. So that's why you sketch nice and light so that you can go back and make adjustments as you need to. Okay, so this is just, think of this as scaffolding, you know, of a building, and we're going to add on to this quite a bit. Like the hair is going to go, you know, on top of this, the ears are going to go on top of this, like, you know, the neck, we're going to get the neck in there a little bit. But for now, we're just focused on where is that vertical line from the crown of the head to the chin. And I'm going to place it just about there at a 3/4 view, right? So we're seeing more of this side of the head than we are seeing this side. It's very much eclipsed, like a crescent moon. So we are only seeing like a little crescent sliver of the left side of Demetrius's face, his left, our right, and we're seeing all of the right side of his face, our left. Okay, so now we want to find the horizontal line where the eyes are falling, but since we are looking at this egg shape that is on a tilt, now our horizontal axis is also on a tilt, just like the vertical. So we're looking for a curved line right here. And if you've got the printout of this photograph, I would take a dark pencil and just draw directly onto the photograph. So draw that vertical axis from the crown of the head down through the center of the eyebrows, tip of the nose, center of the lips, and center of the chin. Just draw that line right there on the piece of paper, and that will really help you to see it. And then before we draw it on our paper, let's notice which direction the horizontal curve is on, because depending on if the person that you're doing the portrait of is looking up or looking down, that's going to affect how that line is tilted. So Demetrius his head is tilted slightly up, so we've got this upward curve happening there. And on most people's heads, this eye line falls about halfway down. So, but it depends on the person, and that's halfway down from the crown of the head to the chin. Think about where we would balance a book on the top of our head. That's the crown of the head. It's not the hairline. It's not the top of the forehead. So if we measure from way up here, then the eyes definitely are halfway down. So we're going to find that halfway point between way up here and the chin, and we're going to draw a slightly curved horizontal line that is curving in an upward direction because the eyes are curved in an upward direction. But then I want to take note that there is a second line that we might draw right here. So that first line is going to curve down and it's going to end up falling right through the center of the ear. That's where the eye line is. And we talk about this in the class on basic adult proportions, how, you know, there is no perfectly proportioned head. Everybody's heads vary. And some people's eye line is lined up with the top of their ears. Other times the eye line is slightly below. So in the case of Demetrius, his eyebrows are lined up with the top of his ears. We could draw another line right here and hit the top of the ears. So let's go ahead and do that. And then that tells us where the top of his ear is. And then this is center of the ears. This is our eye line, right? Okay. And then about halfway down between, we're going to say the eyebrows and the chin, because I'm looking at it and it seems like it's not halfway down between the eyes and the chin. So about halfway between that second line that we just drew at the eyebrow line and the chin, we're going to do another line right here for the bottom of the nose. And some of these things may need to be adjusted. It really just, you know, we're just getting the basics going here. So we're not worried too much about capturing perfect likeness. We're more looking for a diagram of a head in 3/4 view that makes sense and looks like a humanoid. Okay, that's all we want. We want to set our expectations at the basics there. Okay, so the bottom of the nose is very much in line with the bottom of Demetrius's ear. So we've got another nice measurement that lines up there. Okay, and then we're just going to look at Demetrius's lips, because again, this changes from person to person. Sometimes it's about halfway down between the nose line and the chin that I'll draw this line, a little line that shows the cleft underneath the lips, or sometimes it's the line at the center of the lips. But on Demetrius, it looks like his little cleft at the bottom of the lips is about halfway down between the nose and the chin. And then I'm going to do one more line here for the center of the lips. Okay. And that's just an easier way, I think, than saying it's about 1/3 of the way down. So the line at the center of the lips is typically about 1/3 of the way down from the nose to the chin. So if that's not making sense, it may make more sense as we get a little bit of some sketchiness going here. So I'm just going to do a little kind of halfway line there just so it makes sense that we're at the bottom of the nose. And I'm going to take the side of my pencil. I've got a 4B now in my hand, and I'm just going to shade on the side of my pencil and get the rough idea of some eyes in there. I'm just doing a little fuzzy eye shading right there, just so that we can solidify what's happening on these lines. So it might look kind of weird, might look like an alien right now, but we're drawing nice and light. We're not committed to any of these lines. We're just finding the shapes of our diagram here. Okay, and then now we can start to double check some things as we go, and also start to add in the ears and the neck and the hair and all that. So let's do the ears and the neck and the hair, and then we'll make some adjustments based on Demetrius's facial features in just a moment. Any questions up until now? Let me look at the chat and see if there are any questions popping out. Looks like we're all pretty good. Okay, so let's get just the rough shape of Demetrius's hair going here. And so we can use the eyebrow line as a way to kind of measure where the hairline is starting. And we can use, you know, where we kind of tentatively placed the eyes as well. And so we're just looking for kind of the outer silhouetted shape of the hair. We're not going to get too detailed with the hair here, so I'm kind of sketching the shape of the ponytail. Noticing how that comes away a little bit from the egg shape in order to get all that in there. Because it's not necessarily going to fall directly against that egg shape, because the egg shape, you know, might be a little small, might be a little big. So make adjustments as necessary there. Okay. And in sketching the shape of the hair, I kind of sketched in. So I'm looking at the relationship between the eyes and the little sideburns here. So I'm coming down a little bit right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and get the shape of the ear. And we know that we want the ear to come away from the head a little bit and connect to our hairline. Okay, and then I want you to notice how the neck, just because the head is on a tilt, doesn't mean that the neck is also, you know, at a diagonal line. We actually have a pretty straight line coming down from underneath the ears here. We've got a straight line, and then we've got what we call the occipital ridge back here on the back of the skull. And if you feel the back of your skull, where that occipital ridge is, that's where there's kind of a little hollow at the base of the skull, and then you can feel, you know, like an indentation there where it goes into your spine. So that kind of protrudes out a little bit, right? And then if you reach around to the side of your here, I'm going to switch to my forward facing view for just 1 second. So we've got that occipital ridge back here, right? And then if you reach around, you can feel how that ends about halfway, you know, in between your ears. And then your neck is coming down from there. And then you've got your jaw right there. So just, you know, taking note of where that all is on your head is very important. And looking at books on anatomy is very helpful. If you're struggling to draw a face and you're not taking, especially a 3/4 view like this, and you're not taking into account what's happening on the back of the head, you're missing out on quite a bit. And I recently taught a class with live models, a portrait class, and Demetrius was actually a model for that class a couple of times, along with our other model who we drew last year in a lot of these classes. They're two of my favorite models in the Austin area. Anyway, people were complaining when I put the model stand in the center of the room, and they were saying, oh, but I'm gonna have to draw the back of the head. And I was like, well, the back of the head is an extremely important thing to know how to draw, to be able to successfully draw the front of the head, because, you know, reach around there and touch the back of your head. It's all very connected, especially, you know, in this area right here. So understanding the anatomy of the skull and the body and how it connects to the you know, all those bones in our skeleton is very important. If you're struggling with any of this, I recommend getting a book on anatomy for art students and sketching some of those things. Okay, so we've got this muscle coming down for the back of the shoulders right here, and then we're just going to go ahead and draw the t-shirt shape right here and not worry too much about you know, the rest of those muscles, because we're focused on the head. But I do want you to note how, you know, the t-shirt kind of stops there underneath the chin, and then, you know, where the shoulders are in relationship to the chin and the head. So sometimes there's a tendency to, you know, drop shoulders down a little too far or make them too high up or whatever. So just using the relationship between where are the shoulders appearing in this photograph in relationship to the head can be very helpful. Okay, and I think I maybe even need to go a little higher on this side. Okay, I'm just going to use a diagonal hatching line to sketch in the t-shirt here, and I'm aware of the time because I want to move us along to the other portrait. let's see. We're halfway through the class. Let's actually, since well, let's get the eyebrows on here first, at least some of these other things, and then we'll come back and add, some value if we have time at the end. But I want to at least get these other diagrams in here first. Okay, so I said we might need to make adjustments, and as I'm looking at this, I'm noticing that I think I need to pull my nose line down a little bit. So there's always a moment in a class like this where I'm like, oh, I could just power through, but I bet some of you are noticing that you need to make adjustments on some of these lines as well. So by fixing it on my end, maybe it'll inspire you to not just power through on your end. Okay, rather than drawing the whole thing, that whole line all over again, I'm just going to do that where I feel like the nose was a little lower. Okay, and then I think the mouth like more here, and then that underneath the lips is more there. Okay. And now I want us to use circles to really help us to solidify these other features here. So I'm going to draw kind of the circle for where the eye socket is. Think about on a skull how big the eye socket is. And this, might look a little creepy for a second here, but I think this really helps to line up the eyebrows too, because where we drew that circle, we should be hitting the eyebrow line, and it looks like we are, and we can kind of use that to help guide us on where to put the eyebrows, because the eyebrows are resting at the top of that eye socket. And also that can help us see, where the nose, if it's in the right place, if we have eclipsed, that side of the head that is not as visible to us in the 3/4 view, if we've got that in the right place. And because of the nature of what's visible in a 3/4 view, the convex nature of the eye, we've got a little indentation right here, and then the cheekbone comes forward a little bit. So we've got more of a shape like that. So it feels like a little Pac-Man, moon shape there. And so we're looking for something more like that. And then thinking about like the highest elevational points on the skull, again, we've got well, I'm saying again because we did this in the adult facial proportion class. So same idea in that class, but just applying it to 3/4 view here. So the forehead comes forward, the tip of the nose comes forward. We're going to put a circle everywhere there is a protrusion on the head where the elevation is a little higher. So we've got the circle on the chin because the chin comes forward, the nose comes forward, and then we've got the highest points on the cheekbones. And I'm just looking in relationship to where the eye socket kind of ends. Like we can kind of see the shadow underneath the eyes that tends to fall there is where the skull is sunken in right there for the eye socket, right? And then the light is hitting right here on this ridge where the highest cheekbone is. So I'm just circling that. You can circle it on your photograph if you have a printout. And that really helps to, just to identify it in the photograph to then see where you need to put it in your drawing. And then over here, we're not seeing very much of that side of the cheek. So we only have an eclipsed view of that circle. And then we're just looking at the photograph and seeing if those things line up. Like, is the amount of the left side of the face that's visible to you, is that being reflected in your drawing? So where we have the line for the center of the lips, look at, in the photograph, how much of this left side of Demetrius's lips are really visible, and how much of space did you leave in your photograph to draw that side of the lip? Like, look at the little shapes that we're seeing, this kind of heart shape on the upper lip. Like, how much of that heart shape is visible there? How much is visible on the bottom lip? and then how much space is there between that and the edge of the cheek. Also, when I draw diagrams like this, it always reminds me of a clown face, and then it took me a while to realize, wow, clowns are kind of drawing skulls on their faces, which is a little it's interesting how so many people are scared of clowns. It makes sense. So we're kind of drawing the shapes on the skull on the face diagram here, so it's kind of no surprise that it ends up feeling like a clown face. All right, and then one thing that's like, you can't leave it out when you're drawing someone like Demetrius with, with such a prominent facial hair. Oh my God, why don't I just say mustache? The mustache. The mustache is like a character hair on the face. We got to get that mustache in there. And the mustache can really help us to kind of measure, the space between the nose and the lips, since it's covering up all that space there. So make sure you leave enough space for the mustache, and kind of use the mustache as a way of measurement to see if that's all in line. But again, we're not worried about absolute perfect likeness here. We just want it to feel like a human being, and for all these things to line up in a way that feels, like a human's diagram here. Okay, so we're not going to sketch the those facial features in too much detail here, but I'm going to just quickly get the eyes in here, and I'm just looking at the shapes of what's visible on Demetrius's eye, and I'm mainly just looking at the value that's jumping out at me, which is the top lid, and then a little bit of this shape here near the tear duct. So something like that. And then we'll get the pupil in there, because the iris and the pupil, because we need to use the iris and the pupil for a measurement here. So I put a little reflective light in there because I couldn't help it. And I'm shading in a little bit of that, but mostly I want to use that to draw a little dotted line here and see if this lines up. So we want the center of the eye to line up with the edge of the mouth, and that's the line, the part in the center of the mouth. And even though that's kind of hidden underneath the mustache here, it does look like that would line up. So leave that alone. I'm going to add some of the value that I'm seeing on the nose here just a little bit. And then same thing over here. Just going to draw the main value. So I got some eyelashes sticking out here. I've got the top lid. And you can even just keep using like the side of your pencil to shade some things in, and then see if we can get that line at the center of the the dotted line from the center of the eye to line up with the edge of the mouth. Okay, so like I said, if I had more time, I would make a lot of adjustments to try to make this look a little more like Demetrius here in this sketch. But since we don't have the time, I'm not going to worry about it too much. We got a head that feels like a human being's head, and we lined up all those things according to the measurements that we were seeing in the photograph, and we've got a head in a 3/4 view here. And the way that you're going to achieve likeness is just to go back and measure and measure again, and try to get all the things to line up in a way that match what you're seeing in the photograph. And then the last thing I want to add here is how the jawline is much different than what we drew for our egg shape. So I'm going to add, and the cheek might not have lined up. So any adjustments, you want to make as far as like the overall head shape in relationship to our model, and how that, comes away from the egg shape, that'll also make a difference in capturing likeness as well, and like another thing I'm noticing is if I really wanted to try to capture a little more likeness here real quick, I could narrow this cheekbone over here on this side, and already it's starting to feel a little more like my friend Demetrius here. And also, just value, and 3 dimensions of of the nose and things like that that are going to start to make that face come to life a little bit more and look like the person. I'm just going to use another diagonal hatching line to fill in the hair a little bit here, just for a little bit more sense of completion. And then we'll move on to the other one, which we got 20 minutes, but I think we can do it. We're at least going to get the main diagram going here. We might not get as much detail going on this one, but we'll also go a little faster since we don't have to explain everything we're doing quite as much. Okay, so we're looking at this photograph now, and we've kind of got the exact opposite in terms of our clock. So crown of the head is at about 1 o'clock, chin is at around 7 o'clock. So let's get that egg shape in here with the crown of the head at 1 o'clock. Another easy way to find that egg shape, this is what I typically do start with, although it's interesting I didn't do it with that one, is draw a circle and then do a little half oval with a narrow, more of a narrow point on the other side. And that can really help you find the egg shape if you're struggling to just get that egg shape to happen. All right, and this is just our very, elementary scaffolding to get started here. So we're not attached to anything in regards to the head or facial features. We just want an egg shape to get us started. Okay, so now let's find that vertical line. It feels like it's a little closer to the edge of the face here. And yeah, it definitely is, because on the other 3/4 view, we could see some space in between the tip of the nose and the side of the cheek. And here, okay, we can see a little space, but it's not as much space. We definitely can't see as much of the lips. So we've got a little bit more of a severe 3/4 view happening. And this is the challenge of drawing this with what I would draw with a really light pencil. Doing it with a dark pencil, got a lot of dark lines I don't want already, but that's okay. We will press on. Okay, so we don't necessarily need that circle anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and erase it, although sometimes that circle does magically line up with the bottom of the nose, but I can't predict that happened on everybody's drawing, so I'm not going to use it, but sometimes that does happen, and that's really helpful. Okay, I might have a little bit more of a severe tilt happening here, but I'm just going to roll with it since we're running low on time. Okay, so let's look for that line for the center of the eyes, and you can draw it directly on your printout if you've got a printout that you want to draw directly on, and then eyebrows in line with the top of the ears. So we're going to go about halfway down, and it is on a tilt, but it's a little more horizontal this time. It feels a little more straight to me. It doesn't feel like it's on that upward curves as much. Okay, and then the eyebrows a little bit above that. Yeah, it feels a little more straight to me, but we can always adjust that if we need. So yeah, never, marry yourself to any of these lines. That's why I want you drawing these really light with a pencil that's easy to erase and not getting attached immediately to anything until you've, established the correct placement of all this in relationship to, the model that the person that you're drawing. Okay, so about halfway down between the eyes and the chin, although it seems like Demetrius' nose is a little bit higher than that halfway mark. So that's the center of the mouth, and this is the bottom of the chin. All right, but let's see, because this maybe is not gonna all line up exactly how we want it to. Let's go ahead and get we might need to make some adjustments to all of that. Let's go ahead and get the loose idea of the hairline in there. The hairline really helps me to visualize it. All those things really help me to like see if my measurements are off. So even though I know, I'm saying not to get too attached to anything, but we can always redraw the hair too if we need to. As long as we're keeping all these lines nice and light, everything can be easily erased and adjusted as we go. So we've got the idea of the hair in there. We're going to get the idea of the ear in there. And then we're seeing much more of the neck this time. We can see the back of the head. We can see, more of the neck coming out there underneath the ears. So that can also really help us in our measurements to see where adjustments might need to be made. And I can see, like, does the nose line up with the bottom of the ears? So far in my drawing, it looks like it will. It's not like a perfectly straight line going back there, but I could definitely tie a string theoretically and get a straight line right there. So maybe we draw a straight line. All right, I have a feeling we're going to end up adjusting a lot of this. Like already I can tell my chin is not quite in the right place. But let's get the neck in there first before I start trying to fix everything. I'm getting ahead of myself, y'all. All right, so let's get the neck in there. So coming out of the bottom of the ears, a little bit of a curve. Then we've got the back of the t-shirt and the shoulder muscles there. And we can see, where does the shoulder line up with the chin again. So like that. And then the front of the neck is a little bit farther back. Okay, that neck feels way too narrow to me. I'll come forward with it a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to use my little t-shirt line to help me. Okay, let's see. So now let's start to get these circles on here. I think this is where I went wrong, is this whole shape. So if I draw the circle, like if I drew the circle on my photograph, how much of that circle could I draw before it gets cut off because of the 3/4 view? So I can see quite a bit of that circle. The way the head is tilted, I can actually see more of the chin than you might expect. And I'm going to go ahead and just adjust the side of the head over here and the eyebrow line and all that and get that to come forward. I feel like that resolved a lot of it for me. Right, and then I'm going to get the tip of the nose circle in there. Going to get that circle for the eye socket. So I think it's just the way the head is, slightly lifted in relationship to the neck and the rest of it that's just throwing me off a tiny bit. So we've got those eye socket circles, the cheekbone circles, the forehead circles. Go ahead and sketch eyebrows in there. We'll get that mustache. Since it's such a great way to help us measure the face. And then this is definitely a tricky moment right here because that line, I erased a lot of my vertical line, but there's definitely a lot less of the lips that we can see compared to the other 3/4 view. So it's just all about noticing how much space is there in between what part of the lips is visible and the edge of the face. So in your drawing, you know, this, you maybe have too much or too little space right there. So you just want to make adjustments based on what's visible. Okay. And then I'm just going to use the side of my pencil this time to find the center of the eyes and not worry about drawing all those details in the eyes this time. But I do want to have those eyelashes come off a little bit because it makes it makes a difference for me. You could even just use that value on the side of your pencil and then just add, you know, some of those shapes in on top of that too, and that can really help. Okay, so now we want to draw that dotted line down from the pupil and see if we hit the corner of the mouth. And over here, it's going to be, we're not really going to see the full corner of the mouth, but we can still see if that is all on the same line. And for me, it appears to be. I'm going to leave all that alone. And the mustache kind of comes a little bit more forward than the side of the face right there. Okay. And then, yeah, once we start adding in like the planes of the nose and all that, we're going to definitely start to achieve a little more likeness than we may have right now. We can use that circle that we drew for the side of the head to kind of create the ridge of the nose right there. So all of these little measurements really help you to line things up. And I've seen these measurements taken in a lot of different ways. I'm going to go back to my other sketch here. I've seen people measure in terms of rectangles, in terms of diagonal lines. There's a great Da Vinci diagram where Da Vinci just draws crisscrossing shapes. So crosses where, like, you know, where does a cross line up from the edge of the nose and the eyebrow, you know, drawing a box and then putting a cross inside of it. You know, these circles and shapes that I'm using to help find the facial features here is kind of a simplified version of a lot of different diagrams that I've seen in my practices. But a lot of different artists do this in different ways. And you can come up with your own way, you know, whatever you draw on top of your photograph that helps you to see those measurements, then you do it in your drawing and see if everything lines up. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left here. Are there any questions that are coming up that I can address now? I finished a little early.
There's been no questions today. Everybody's just been following along,
Wow, okay.
absorbing the information.
Okay, great. I see Jay Patel said the bottom of the ear was above the tip of the nose and thought that was wrong. Bottom of the ear was above the tip of the nose. Okay, so yeah, using those, you know, lines to see like where is the bottom of the ear in relationship to the tip of the nose, that really helps. You know, I'll take out my pencil if it's a printout and just draw so many lines connecting those things. You might even, one of the things we did in one of the other classes was we drew a rectangle around the entire head. And then we used the rectangle itself to create measurements. You could get out a ruler and you could measure the shape of the rectangle. And I've done this a lot with private lesson students. When I have time to really slow down, we'll take out, you know, a ruler and measure the box in the photograph that we drew around the head, and then draw that same size box on our paper and kind of create a little grid where we measure, like, where is the eyebrow, you know, in relationship to the top of our box and the crown of the head, and where is the chin in relationship to, you know, the side of the box, and just, you know, use those measurements to kind of grid it out and find all those things. And probably the biggest pitfall that people fall into that doesn't achieve likeness is kind of just moving on, even though you notice something is off. Like, you know, I noticed in regards to Demetrius, like there's several things that are not achieving likeness on his head. Just going back to this one, since it has a little more detail. But I mean, y'all saw how much that made a difference and started to make it look more like Demetrius when all I did was change the shape of the you know, the side of the cheek over here. Automatically that jawline and the cheek shape started to make it look more like him than before, right? So, and other things that I can see that are off right now in regards to his likeness are the space between the edge of the eye and the hairline in my drawing. I need to probably shift the eye more this way and maybe make the eyes a little bigger, and that would resolve some things in regards to the eyes. I didn't really put, you know, any of like the planes of the nose in there, so there's a lot of flatness happening in my sketch so far. So just starting to like create more 3 dimensions and adding the value. I saw somebody asked, what are the next steps? The next steps are, yeah, just double checking, aligning things more, you know, if we're trying to really achieve likeness, and then noticing the planar, you know, like in regards to the planes, like the 3-dimensional planes. So like the contours here. So the contours are what's going to really bring it to life. Noticing, you know, in every part of the head and the face is going to help you achieve likeness. So it may seem like the shape of the neck isn't going to make a big difference in making it look like that person, but the shape of the neck is, you know, it's all part of the package, and it's going to help you, you know, recognize that person in your drawing. You know, little things like even just like the shape of the side of the mouth, like on Demetrius, like this, like how wide I might make that value on the side of the mouth, and the way that the mouth kind of dips in a certain direction, where I had made it more of like a straight line just to sketch it and move on. And it's actually, it kind of comes forward a tiny bit and then goes back in that direction. And that starts to make it look a little more like him. And then the top lip, you know, getting that shape to match what I'm seeing in the photograph a little bit more. So, you know, just little things like that make a huge difference. And the light, there's a lot happening with the light that we did not add into this because we're, you know, just don't have time and are focused on the values here, or sorry, the dimensions and the proportions. So we're not really focused on the values, but if we had time to really focus on the values, you know, everything boils down to the light. So getting what the light is doing in there is going to make such a huge difference to start to make it look more like that person. Okay, I wish we had more time, but I'd love to see some of y'all's sketches, your diagrams. If you want to hold them up, Chanel can spotlight you and I can see yours. Very nice, Sarah. Yeah, that looks great. Yeah, you really did a great job capturing likeness and all those shapes of the head overall, and really nice work. And thank you for that comment, Derica. Looks like I'm so glad that this helped. All right, Janice. Yeah, look at that. Really nice values there so far. Oh, I gotta close the chat box. I've got all of our faces covering up your drawing there. Oh, that looks so great. Yes, love it. Oh, and I love that you've got the notes. I love a good page of notes. So satisfying to see all those notes. And yeah, great head diagrams. that bottom one, I'm starting to feel some really good likeness with that one, and the value is really strong in that one so far. Y'all got really far with capturing likeness and value in some of these. I'm impressed. All right, yes, another good example there. Oh yeah, look at that one, very strong. Yeah, I'm really feeling some likeness in that one, and just all those features really lined up on that axis on that tilt. Really, really nice. And lovely value again. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but all right. Yeah. Another good example, Barbara. Thank you. Oh yeah, let me see the bottom one too. Oh yes. I know that bottom one was tricky one, but you got it all on that vertical line, and you got the head tilt and the chin lined up. That's all that matters for today, in my opinion. Okay. This is Deb. Yeah. Maybe we want that vertical line to be a little bit more scooched over, so we're seeing a little less of that side of the face, but I can tell you've got that like tilt at the right angle. And everything's lined up on the vertical line that you drew, so that's nice. All right, Ryan, I like it. Yeah, the chin maybe needs to come forward a tiny bit on the top one to make it like, you know, at that angle, but really great work there. You know, it's a lot in an hour, so y'all can go back and make some adjustments too. Keep working on these if you want, of course. All right, yeah, it's another good one. Charlene, thank you. Yeah, again, I think the chin maybe needed to come forward a little bit more in that one. All right, yeah, that one, everything's lining up really nicely on that one on the left, Sophia. I'm really believing that head tilt and 3/4 view, and you got some likeness happening. Very nice. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, those are really strong. I feel like an upward gaze of both of those too. You got the eyes looking up. All right. Okay, great value on that one. Those lips and mustaches are looking really nice. One, I think the eyes maybe need to come down a tiny bit on that one on the top. The one on the bottom, though, that all lined up really nicely. And yeah, I think like if proportions are off, but you got everything on the same vertical axis and it's all tilted in the same direction, and the chin and the crown of the head are lined up at the same angle, that's half the battle. All right. Yeah. Wow, you really captured some likeness in both of those. Yeah, everything's lined up on those axes like we talked about. Okay, I don't want to go over time. We're right at the end of the hour, but I'm going to hop over to Instagram for just about 10 minutes, and I'll be there to do a brief Q&A if anybody has any lingering questions, and then I'll see you next week for our next free Michaels class. You can sign up in the same place that you signed up for tonight's class. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.